It's 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 Pacific. I'm Todd Vanderheiden. Good to have you with us on this Friday. A major diplomatic uproar today between China on one side and Canada and the United States on the other. A Chinese balloon somehow ended up flying over North America, a surveillance weather balloon of sorts, a clear violation of North American airspace, including over the state of Montana, where the United States has top secret nuclear bases. The balloon also flew over parts of Saskatchewan, as you can see. It's still flying in this area, by the way, more than 50 kilometers above the Earth's surface. China is trying to say the balloon only collecting weather, other scientific data, but the United States military is not buying that. Listen to this.
We are aware of the PRC's statement. However, the fact is we know that it's a surveillance balloon, and I'm not going to be able to be more specific than that. We do know that the balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable. And so we've conveyed this directly to the PRC at multiple levels. And in terms of specific locations, I'm not going to be able to go into specific locations, again, other than to say it's moving eastward at this time.
Again, the balloon is still up there, but it has led to this diplomatic uproar, including the cancellation of the top U.S. diplomat's upcoming trip to China. Antony Blinken was supposed to go to China next week. Now that is not happening. Canada has also recalled China's ambassador over the incident and is demanding answers, although we have not officially confirmed in terms of the federal government whether the balloon entered Canadian airspace. CTV News has learned a warning did go out to Canadian pilots this week to watch for, quote, an untethered balloon east of Saskatoon. All right, for more on the implications, let's bring in retired Major General Denis Thompson, former NATO task force commander, joining us today from Montreal. General Thompson, always good to see you. Your thoughts on this balloon?
Well, good afternoon, Todd. Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that the U.S. military is being very cagey about the capabilities of this balloon. Typically, military balloons are tethered, and they're tethered inside of military installations in order to provide surveillance in the immediate surrounding. They don't need to launch a balloon of this nature in order to surveil an adversary's territory when they have a complete complement of satellites at their disposal. So what I think it's interesting because obviously if a balloon's overflying your territory, you can predict where it's going. It has an enormous radar cross-section. As you mentioned, it's flying at some 50 kilometers up, which is well above the height of any commercial aircraft. So it poses no danger to commercial aircraft. And what it could do, perhaps, if it was equipped with military-grade surveillance equipment, is gather more intelligence on bases that they can already gather intelligence on inside of the United States. So it's interesting from a political standpoint because, of course, now Mr. Blinken has canceled his trip to China, and he may be using this as a stick to beat China because just yesterday the U.S. got or received permission once again to use 8 various bases inside the Philippines, which they had been barred from for some time, is an answer to China's transgressions in the South China Sea. So in some ways, this balloon is a gift to the U.S. because they can use it as a rhetorical stick to beat up the Chinese.
Why not just shoot it down, General Thompson?
That's a great question, and I think if it was of military value, they would have shot it down because, frankly, it's flying over Montana, not New York City, and I'm sure if you brought it down, the probability of any damage would be rather slim. So that's what also indicates to me that it's probably a weather satellite or a scientific satellite gone astray rather than one of a military nature. And we'll know when the Chinese give a full explanation, as the U.S. has required them to do. And I don't think that Mr. Blinken's visit will be back on until that explanation has been provided. Because remember, it's postponed, not canceled.
Yeah, well said. And we know, of course, the relationship between the U.S. and China, and Canada and China, of course, has become very frosty and continues to do so almost by the day now. So this is adding to the tensions. You're saying perhaps somebody made a big mistake here or somebody screwed up and somehow that balloon ended up over North America. Your impressions on what might have gone wrong here? I mean, do this kind of thing happen often?
I don't know if it happens often. I'm not a balloonist, but I can say that everybody makes mistakes, and I don't think the Chinese are any different than any other nation. If this was a deliberate act, I would be quite shocked, unless, again, it's one way for the Chinese to poke a stick in the US's eye. Perhaps if this was deliberate, this is the Chinese version of Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan. But I really think that this is an error in judgment on behalf of who's ever responsible for the Chinese balloon program. And I'm sure that that individual is standing on a carpet somewhere being told off.
One other question for you, when trying to determine whether this has any military capabilities, you're saying in your mind, unlikely not, because that's not typically how these sorts of balloons, this kind of balloon typically operates, correct? This may well be more of a weather or scientific monitoring balloon.
Right, because you can't, unless it's an airship, and it doesn't appear to be an airship from the photos that have been provided, you can't necessarily steer it, and you're a victim of the jet stream or whatever other high-altitude winds are at play. The sensors, of course, if they're 30 or 50 kilometers up, particularly if they're cameras, are going to have be of much more benefit and provide a higher fidelity photo. But frankly, surveillance satellites fly at 200 kilometers. Probably have much higher intelligence or higher capability because you're not afraid of losing them. And you can gather the intelligence you need from the safety of space without triggering an international incident, which this event seems to have done.
General Thompson, always good to have you part of our coverage. Thanks for this again today.
Take care, Todd. Thank you.